Please subscribe or I will transport into your living room and do it myself, so subscribe as I break down Star Trek Strange New Worlds, the best new Trek show, and let's get into episode 5 of season 2. So the episode starts out with Nurse Chapel doing a log and she explains that they are going to be exploring a moon in the Vulcan system, and apparently it had an ancient civilization and it's called Kirkov. As it appears someone has put Kirk and Chekhov together, and thanks C Fanatics for that tie bit. Go check out his channel, and if you're subscribed to his channel, comment down below to tell me. But Nurse Chapel is preparing for an interview for the Vulcan Science Academy, which was teased in episode 1 of the season, and then we see various members of the crew test her medical knowledge, but La'an asks her why she isn't doing this with Spock since the interview is with a Vulcan, and Ortegas tells her that things are weird between them. Spock, Chapel and M'Benga are then in a turbo lift together. And there's an awkward silence, but then Spock exits the turbo lift and we see him cook with Pike. Then he has a science officer meeting and cleans up Samuel Kirk's mess. Then we see him hang out the bridge ladies and they're all laughing while Spock is just calm and collected. T'Pring then contacts Spock to tell him that their ceremonial engagement dinner has been moved up. Pike then sits down with Spock and he can see that Spock is distressed, and he tells him his engagement dinner has been moved up. But Pike tells that there have been some changes to the plan. Spock thinks that this will mean that he'll get some time off to prepare for the dinner, but Pike informs him that he now has a passenger and it's Nurse Chapel. They have an awkward conversation, but then Spock starts scanning the moon, but then the anomaly pulls them down and they have to lie on the edge of it and surf it, I guess. But then Chapel calls Spock's name and then he wakes up in sickbay to find out that he's turned human and responds with what the fuck, but before he can finish cursing they cut to the into like, what, seriously, was this a rating issue? It just would have been funny, and I ask that you sign the petition to save Star Trek Prodigy. We then see Una and La'an take a look at the shuttle and they find this device which Yura then decodes as a communicator, and she puts it on the view screen and the alien's name is Yellow. Pike tries to explain that they changed Spock and this alien is kind of like those annoying helplines, so yeah, that was something to relate to. Pike and M'Benga then explain to Spock that they need time and they're going to try to change him back, and Pike tells Spock that he told T'Pring and his family the situation, but Spock reacts, but Pike tells him that he only told them that you were injured in a shuttle accident and they thought it would be logical to postpone the dinner, and M'Benga allows Spock to return to work. Spock then again hangs out with the bridge ladies and this time he laughs with them, even so much he kinda makes Una feel uncomfortable. It seems Spock then helps Pike cook and he goes crazy bacon. He then straight up is ready to attack Kirk because he won't clean up his mess, and Spock seems to be very OCD. La'an then explains to Spock that he's going through human adolescence, and we then see Chapel and she stayed up all night to work on changing Spock back, but M'Benga comes in and tells her that she's late for her interview and this Vulcan isn't impressed with her and pretty much says that she isn't doing things right, so she walks away feeling pretty defeated and the call ends. But then she sees Spock and he says Vulcans are such jerks and hugs her, but then Pike calls to tell him his mother is coming aboard. We then cut to the transporter room. Pike greets Amanda Grayson and says he's sorry that Pelia isn't here, but she just rubs it off. But I have a problem with this which I will split off into its own video. Spock then comes in and his Mum tells him that they must host the dinner here if they want to make sure that the wedding will happen, and then this absolutely got laugh out of me when Spock says what wonderful news, and then we cut to black but come back and Spock then yells at his mother in this funny way and she catches onto and tells him to take off his hat and his human ears are revealed. Amanda, Pike and Spock then talk and Pike explains to Amanda that they won't be able to change Spock back before the dinner, and Amanda explains that if T'Pring's parents found out he's fully human they would call off the engagement, and so Amanda comes up with Spock will have play pretend and then he can make sure that the engagement stays on, and so they begin practicing. M'Benga gives Spock prosthetic ears. Amanda teaches Spock how to handle a Vulcan teapot without burning his hands. The bridge ladies teach him how to act like a Vulcan. Amanda tries to teach him how fake a mind meld to no avail, with a comment from Number 1 saying Spock looks constipated, which is just hilarious. We then see that Chapel isn't succeeding in creating a crew for Spock, but she then realizes that the aliens will be able to cure Spock. Chapel gets Uhura and Ortegas to go with her in a shuttle to go convince the aliens to help cure Spock, and we then see Spock in the transporter room waiting for T'Pring and his mum trying to calm him down, and T'Pring beams aboard and Spock does his hi babe in the Vulcan way, and T'Pring is like, I have spent all day with my mother and it is hilarious how she's like, I absolutely hate my mum so I don't want to be around her any more than I have to. I'm sure a lot of young women have those type of moms, so shout out to you gals. We then see T'Pring and Spock walk to Captain Pike's quarters and T'Pring is a little stressed, says a little bit of a Vulcan joke, and Spock slips up and accidentally laughs. T'Pring and Spock are then waiting as their parents walk in. Then T'Pring's parents ask what is Spock's injuries, but Spock interjects and tells them that Captain Pike spent all night preparing Vulcan delicacies, and T'Pring's dad at first likes it, but as soon as her mum says no her dad corrects, and it's a very funny dynamic. They then start the events, but then it cuts to the girl team coming up on the anomaly and they decide that they need to go in it to talk to the aliens. We then cut back to Pike's quarters and Spock has to pour some Vulcan tea and T'Pring's mum finds it acceptable, but we then cut to the girls in the alternate dimension and they come into contact with Blue but then asks for Yellow. We then cut back to Pike's quarters and Amanda tells T'Pring everything that she could improve on. T'Pring's mum then tells Spock on everything he could improve on, and man does she not hold back any punches. Spock then goes to the bathroom and gets very angry but then talks to M'Benga about the cure and he tells him that Chapel went to the aliens to go get the cure and Spock is worried for her. We then cut to the girl team and Chapel had to tell Yellow that she loves Spock as more than just a friend, and by doing that they give her the cure. It then comes time for the mind meld and Pike tries to stall by saying as a part of Spock's human heritage that they must play charades, but Chapel comes in with the cure, takes Spock to the bathroom and injects the cure, and now his Vulcan blood has returned but his physical features won't appear for an hour. Spock mind melds with his mum and T'Pring's mum criticizes it and T'Pring defends him. T'Pring's parents approves of the engagement and he reveals that a human performed these rituals as she believes that a human couldn't do them, and T'Pring decides to separate from Spock. Then we see the Vulcan Science Academy guy denies Chapel that she's been declined a position at the Science Academy and she tells him she doesn't need to be a part of the Academy. Spock and Pike then share a drink and Amanda explains the memory that She shared and she beams away and Spock and Chapel go into Spock's quarters and they then make out and so Spock is a cheater. What? Well, the episode ends. So you next time.